Welcome to the Pregnancy Help Podcast. I'm Christine Grimmett, and I'm joined today by Tracie Shellhouse, the Vice President of Ministry Services here at Heartbeat International, and Debbie Simmons, the founder and CEO of Anchor Point in Texas. And for over 14 years, Debbie has led Anchor Point, a nonprofit organization that brings hope and holistic support to families at every stage of life. Debbie takes a legacy-minded approach to leadership, so we'll hear how leaders in the pregnancy help movement can step beyond the daily operations of ministry to embrace this approach. And as a reminder, Heartbeat International's Academy has training options on leadership, client services, fundraising, and other topics related to pregnancy help available in print, online, and in person. For more information on how you can train and equip your team, visit heartbeatservices.org or connect with us directly at support@heartbeatinternational.org. Well, Tracie and Debbie, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us on today's show.
Well, I am happy to be here and excited to be here with Debbie. Thank you for coming and spending time with us today.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, Debbie, you have been active in the pregnancy help movement for a long time, and there's a very rich history, and you've actually provided a lot of training and insight. I know that I've been the recipient of that at an in-depth day many years ago. At a Heartbeat conference, but I would love to hear a little bit about how you got involved in pregnancy help. What brought you to this movement?
That's a great question. And I'm going to go back really till when I was younger, and then I'm going to come right back. So I'm just going to take you back for just a little bit. But what we need to know about me is that as a teenager, I always loved kids and I wanted to be a young grandma. So I set out on this quest to be a young grandma, and I knew it required getting married, having kids, and then you get to the grandkids. And so I went off, and I've always accomplished everything I wanted, and met my husband, and I'm like, can we start having kids? And then I got infertility. That was my journey for many, many years. And we ultimately ended up pregnant. And we ended up pregnant through a fertility study at the Baylor College of Medicine. And we got pregnant with quads. And that was originally diagnosed as twins. And then we thought we were going to miscarry, and it became 4. And we became very, very aware of how sacred life is in the pregnancy journey itself. Our doctor had us go see a doctor for selective reduction. And at that point, I didn't even realize, like, you just do what your doctor says. And I'm like sitting in there with the guy, and I'm going, I love life. I don't know why I'm here. But you know what? I learned so much during that appointment, and about how parents can pressure you and all these different things that I just was not even aware of. So it's been invaluable that I went through it, but we were still very staunchly, we're like for life. And so we go on this journey, and our goal is to get to 30 weeks. And at 26 weeks, my water broke on one of the sacs, and they sent me to the hospital. And the next morning, the first baby stuck his hand through my stitched cervix, waved to the world, and said, I'm coming. And at that point, technology was not available to save my baby. And so Zach was born. They put him in my arms, and I just held him as he passed into eternity. And then we waited to see if my body could handle keeping the other 3. And a couple hours went by, and that my body got very sick, and they came back and they said, we're going to have to induce. So they induced the other 3 boys, and Josh, Nate, and Chris arrived on the scene, and they placed them in my arms, and off they went into eternity. And that for me was this huge eye opener to, I wanted to be about impact, and I wanted to be about eternity, because it changed everything. Everything changed at that moment. And I didn't really know how I was going to get through that. But what I said to God, the first question that arises in me in something difficult like that is, I'm like, why God, why this, why me, why my boys, why, and you've given me this love, and I want to be a young grandma, and I can't get there. And God's like, give me the why. And I'm like, no, I like my why. It's like my security blanket. And he's like, give it to me. And I'm like, okay. So I couldn't figure anybody else to trust but him. So I gave him that. And he said, ask me, how do I survive? So that's the question I began asking. And it came down to, next best step, and breathing. So breathe and then find your next best step. And so I would just do the next thing I could think of. God would meet me. He would show me the next step. I would do the next step. He'd meet me. And that grew my faith muscle. And so I went through healing. And as I went through healing, my question changed and it became, how can I thrive? God, you promised to redeem these stories. And I, still want to be a grandma. How can I do this and all this stuff? And ultimately, God opened up doors like crazy. This is how we ended up adopting 9 children out of the foster care system. And then he said, I want you to start Anchor Point, which is the ministry that I run. And I'm like, oh, that's a big deal. And he's like, start it. And I'm like, how do I survive that? Because I don't know what I'm doing. And then how do I thrive? And so my journey into pregnancy center work was through the loss of my children and this love of children that I have. And it just is wired in me through all these years to say, hey, I want to see these families be successful. I want to see these babies grow up. I want to see us break cycles. And it is just a natural expansion of kind of who God has wired me to be. And so that's how I got here. It's a little long, but that's how I got here.
Well, that is amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Mhm.
So often we allow in life, we allow things to actually prevent us from living. And instead, you've taken that and you survived and then thriving. And
Yeah.
then thriving leads to what we're going to be talking about today, which
Mhm.
is living a life that is leaving a legacy and creating
Mhm.
legacy. So for you in the pregnancy help movement, what does it mean for you to live legacy?
Great. And so when I was sitting in that hospital room, everything came about impact, right? And so it is the question of whether you and I choose every day when I'm going to work and the things that I'm doing, that I am going to be extremely intentional in what I do. So I'm going to focus on the legacy that I want to leave. I choose to live now. And so, how do I do that every day with, whether I plan my schedule and I give it to God and I go, okay, show me what we're going to do today. And I'm going to be willing to go there. Or, do I need to invest my time and staff? What do I want to be about? I want to be about helping my staff make sure they stay unstuck, expand what they can do, and they stay unstuck and they become the people that God wants them to be. And so, if I'm doing that well with them, then they will do that well with our clients because our clients need the same thing. They're stuck and we need to help them get unstuck. And then we need to teach them how to stay unstuck, so they can
Yeah.
be kingdom impact players. And so I think just choosing to be relentless about that. And anybody would tell you, if you come along and you sit by me long enough, I'm like, how are you doing? And what's God doing in your life? And where are you going? And what kind of impact are you wired to make?
hmm
Because that is what we should be curious about is helping people be in the sweet spot of what God has created them to do. And then together we have big ripples that we make for eternity.
Yeah, that is awesome. I often talk about doing the things that make our souls sing. And that
Mhm.
sounds to me like what you're talking about, where it's
Yes.
what is your impact? How is the Lord calling you? Because we are not all geared or made the same, but
Right.
we are all made for the same purpose, which is glorifying God.
Mhm.
And living that kind of life does lead to legacy, doesn't it?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
yeah, and
awesome.
and the fact of the matter is, if we don't live our legacy now, we'll have one to leave, but it won't be the one we want to leave. So I remember when I talked to my friend about starting Anchor Point, I was like, "Hey, you want to build something that'll outlive us?" She was. I said, "Oh, it'll be a lot of fun, but it'll be really hard." But I'm going. Thousands of families have been impacted, and if I make sure we set it up right transitioning me out as I get older and we have all the foundation laid, that can be around for decades and decades and decades. And I'm long gone by then, and that would be awesome, So that's what we're working on.
Yeah, that is awesome. So, something that you mentioned is living intentionally, like every day,
Mhm.
looking for what is the opportunity, allowing God to prioritize what you're doing, paying attention to where you should be investing
Mhm.
that moment of your life. So, could you share with us about a moment when you had to choose between a legacy minded decision, maybe over a quick fix?
Yeah. Okay. So this is, some of the questions that God taught me with the boys was lay down your why. How do I survive? How do I thrive? Right. Okay. And I remember during the COVID, after kind of COVID, we stayed open during all that and we had to have, I had to get an employee back and ultimately had to let her go. And I tried to do everything right by her. I tried really hard. And, lo and behold, within the 6 or 9 month time frame that she had after she left, she gave me a awesome lawsuit. And so
Mm,
I was like, why me, God? I did it right. Why this? Why that? And I could choose at that moment to become very bitter, or I could choose to become better. So I laid down my why and I'm like, how do I survive this without it killing the ministry? Right. And so I'm sitting there thinking and I'm going, okay, breathe. I got that part. Okay. And then I was like, I probably ought to call the attorney. Right. And that's a great next step. Right.
yep.
And we figured our way through it, and ultimately we were able to thrive through it and honor everyone in the process. And it was really hard, but God showed up in all the places and honored the fact that, we walked through it well and we trusted and had faith and all this stuff. And so I go, even in those hard things, those questions still apply. My staff and my children, my family, they all watch how I handle challenging things that come my way. And one of our best gifts is for people to be able to see us walk through challenging, difficult, maybe unfair things and to do it with grace and love and joy still is extremely powerful to teaching them how to do it.
It sure is. So, thinking about teaching other people how to do it, you have been in pregnancy help ministry for a long time. You've had the opportunity to serve with a lot of different people and to have all different kinds of interactions and impact. So, when you are working in an organization where there's different, maybe different demographics, you have different people groups. Maybe you're looking at your board of directors. You've got your staff. You've got your donors, you've got your community that is
Mhm.
looking to you for leadership and also looking to you to be able to shine a light in that community. How do you cultivate a culture of legacy amongst those different groups and then collectively, just for the community at large?
Yeah. So if we, 3 words that kind of define me that we use in the book that I wrote around legacy, it's faithful, focused, and fearless, right? And so first of all, I would say you have to be focused about how you go about doing it, right? So I have to be intentional, and we've talked about that. So I want intentional relationships. I seek intentional relationships, and then I have to be faithful, and faithful really has to do not only with our Jesus component, but you know what? I have to value people and I have to love people and I have to see people who even sometimes don't have the same views as I do as valuable and they're created by God and they are precious. And so, how I deal with them or how I just want to care for them and love on them as we have a relationship. What can I do? What can I do to serve them? Because oftentimes in our work, we need to serve and bless people a long time before they come on board and our donors, our sponsors, or whatever they are in our community. But we get to serve. And so that is a key part of winning people to be friends of the ministry and loving them and caring about them. And one of the things that I find most interesting is we certainly get and understand the concept of serving the client. But sometimes we don't understand the concept of serving the donor and serving our community from the perspective of, our donors really are no different than our clients. They're different demographic and stuff, but, they have hurts, they have pains. I mean, I've sat with them at gravesides, I've done all kinds of stuff just to love and walk alongside them. And sometimes we forget that. We just get a check from them periodically and we don't realize how much loving on them we need to do to be intentional. And then the last thing is we need to be fearless. And we serve a God that He is our only audience that we perform for. And no matter what success looks like in the world, if we make Daddy God smile, we're in a good spot. And so we can be brave and we can be courageous and we can stand for what's right and still be amongst people who maybe aren't as excited as we are about our passion, and we can still love them and we can be a bright light that shines in a very dark world.
Yes, that's awesome. And the amazing thing is when we trust in our faithful God and we make
Mhm.
fearless choices, it grows our faith and it grows our ability to believe for bigger things, to believe and imagine even greater. And I know that just within, say, even my own children, that is where legacy really is born, is for them to be able to look to the future and trust that there's a good plan and to not be intimidated or to be distracted because it's
Yeah.
hard to build legacy and there's a lot of distractions in this world if we're not careful. So thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Satan's biggest goal is to distract us.
That's
He doesn't
right.
have to take us out. He just needs to
That's
distract
right.
us. So you are so right on that with your kids.
Yeah. And keeping us busy. That's the other thing. And I think busyness can be a distraction. I appreciate we were talking about focused
Hmm.
and intentionality because a lot of times it's very easy to get distracted or busy but those are not the legacy building things.
Hmm.
And really trusting that the Lord's going to lead us and guide us and give us wisdom to know what things to pick up and what to put down. So that is
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
And I would love to be able to be a fly on the wall within your organization to see what the culture looks like, because I'm sure it permeates all pieces of it. So, what would you say is a practical step that leaders can take to begin to lead with legacy?
Okay, I was just thinking about this. From that standpoint, I would say one of the really cool things they can do is ask the question, and we do this with our staff, and it drives them crazy, but it's very important. Is that all of our goals is to figure out how we work ourselves out of our positions. Okay, that means how do I empower other staff people to do certain things or volunteers to do certain things? And it's a real interesting dilemma because when you have to give stuff away, it's like you have to trust someone else to do it. But I go, look, we can't continue to grow and impact more people unless we free ourselves up to do the things that haven't been done yet. So I said, and I have to evaluate this too. The other day, I was sitting there doing something, and I was in QuickBooks pulling a report, and it wasn't a problem, but I was like, why am I doing this? And I'm like, okay, I just got it done. But then I'm thinking, I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't even know the QuickBooks password to keep me out of it, because it would be much better for me to be making a donor visit or going to see a CEO at a corporation or writing a book or whatever it is that only I can do. And here I am doing QuickBooks and a report. And I'm like, what am I doing? So I have to think through those things. So one of the things we challenge our staff to do periodically is to draw their org chart for, like, what would their organization look if it was 2 or 3 times bigger than it was. So, how would they staff it and everything? And then I'm like, okay, that's great. Now, in every position that you have a volunteer or a staff member, I want you to put them in there for the things that they would be responsible for. And then I want you to write your name in every other spot. And you write your name a lot of times and you're like, oh my, gotta have a plan. But the really cool thing is it then teaches us how to build the organization and to go, okay, if you have a volunteer and they have these kind of skills, they can do these 2 things. And that will free you from that to be able to be more legacy minded, to be more intentional about what you do with your day. And I think that is just a wonderful exercise to kind of have that mindset. And then also that little task to be able to do periodically. And I mean, I used to have a wonderful man. He has since passed on. When I first started, he would call me once a month and he would go, Miss Debbie, how would the organization do if you weren't here? It'd fall apart this week. And then a month or 2 later, I'd be like, "Okay, this side would be fine, and they might have some bumps, but they would be fine. This part of the organization, that's gonna be bad." And so he just wired it in me to start thinking like that, and that is so powerful for leaving legacy and leaving an organization that can thrive without us. That is absolutely, crucial. And being a founder of a ministry, it's really hard for someone to come after you. So you gotta leave a great foundation for that to be able to happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what I hear in that is there's a lot of discipleship and mentorship. Like you're teaching others how to do what you're doing, how to come along and how to partner, and then mentoring that next generation. And so how do you do that on an ongoing basis? Like how do you identify and then step into that space to where it doesn't take up so much of your time that you can't be focused on the mission, but at the same time, you're not so focused on the work about you that you're not noticing those that are laboring alongside you.
Yeah. So I will tell you, I've drawn my own little charts and I've made all those things. And as we have gotten, underneath the Anchor Point umbrella, we actually have a family network of four different divisions. And each one of those is an LLC. So it gets complicated because I talk to myself as boss of both of them all the time, right? But what we've done is we have continued to be very aggressive to restructure the staff to take responsibilities off of me. And we have brought in a chief of staff type person that can be responsible for the day to day people. It's so nice for me from that standpoint of learning to let that go and for them to lead those things and for them to rise up. Now, does everything go exactly as I want it? No, but it's okay. And a lot of times it's better, right? As long as we can get so communication is very key in that, when you release like that you have a really open, good communication and everybody is for each other and we know our hearts are in the right place. And so one of the priorities that we always have is that we're going to trust that everybody's heart is in the right place and they're operating from a good perspective. And so if something goes awire, then we are going to immediately work on the relationship piece because that is the long term, if the task doesn't get done or it flops or whatever, but if the relationship crumbles, we're in trouble. So we have to do that. So the nice thing about having the chief of staff when all that is working is that now I can just love on people because I'm not trying to get things done with them and I actually pay more attention, which is absolutely wonderful. My staff thinks that's wonderful when I'm not so task driven. And it gives me the freedom to do some of the external things and book writing and things like that that only I can do. So that's only been recently. And then the other thing we got me was a assistant. That was wonderful. so so she's cleaning up my stuff and just realizing that you need those things, right?
Yeah.
And we got big things to do, and God wants to do more. And we just got to be willing to let go sometimes. So I think those things have given me the freedom to be more intentional and look at how I can love on people. What kind of trainings can we put them in? Or, are they available like through Heartbeat or different things like that to educate them and help them move to the next level? Then we want to tie into those types of resources. And so it's just being mindful and just loving people and wanting the best for people. And when you have that heartbeat, then you'll do the right things for them.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well,
Mhm.
Debbie, is there anything that we haven't talked about that we should have, or any parting thoughts that you would like to share with the listeners?
Okay, well, first of all, the work that you do is great and awesome, and you need to keep at it, even when you feel like, oh my gosh, it's just such a struggle. But I just look at the size of the kids as they continue to grow, and I go, wow, they're taller than me. And so I'm just like, and I'm enamored by that, oh my gosh, that God gives us such a privilege to do it. If anybody that wants leadership development, the book that I have, The Heart of Legacy, is a great thing and it has lots of practical tools on focused, faithful, fearless, and it has a great, wonderful stories of Anchor Point life change all throughout the back of it. So that would be a great resource that they can use to go to the next level too.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking your time to be with us today, Debbie. And I'm going to hand it back over to Christine.
All right. Thanks, Tracie. Thank you, Deb. If our listeners would like more on topics like this, leadership topics, or just how to grow and strengthen your ministry, be sure to subscribe to the Pregnancy Help Podcast. We have more content coming, several episodes every month coming your way, and lots of great plans for the future for the podcast. So please subscribe and share. And with that, we wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. And thanks for listening to this episode of the Pregnancy Help Podcast.